I mean, I asked Kyle Shanahan yesterday. Do we have that cut, Kev? I asked Kyle Shanahan yesterday.
Kyle, do you plan on announcing a number two quarterback, or are you going to wait till right before the game? And is that something that could rotate week to week throughout the season? How do you see that?
Yes, all that. I mean, I would think probably announce it before we play Pittsburgh, but not this game.
Do you think it could rotate throughout the week, throughout
Definitely.
the year?
Yeah, definitely.
I said, Are you going to announce who your number two quarterback is? Or are you going to wait all the way until the Pittsburgh game and announce it right before that game? And then I said, are you going to juggle who your number two quarterback is throughout the year? And he said, yes, yes, and yes. And I said, you're going to even if you name a starting quarterback or a number two quarterback, you may juggle the two and the three throughout the year. And he said, yes. And I wonder if somebody on the inside, maybe an agent for one of these guys, said, that ain't going to work. I don't want that for my client. And who knows? I mean, I don't know the situation there or how anybody reacted to what he said there, but I found that odd. And to me, that also doesn't sound like a good idea. There's this seems like, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I get the sense that the 49er fan base is divided here. And I don't think it's a good thing to have a weak, first of all, I don't think it's fair to Brock or to the team, nor do I think it's in their best interest to have this ongoing, visceral, public debate over who should be number two and holding Brock Purdy to some crazy standard, waiting to say, he should be out of there. He went, people literally there were several practices this summer where Brock Purdy played really well. And there were a number of people that reported that he was terrible. Yeah. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, wait a second. Whoa, wait a second here. I was just at practice. I know what the fuck I'm watching. And I just watched a guy throw 7 dimes in the middle of a practice. And because, on a 4th down blitz from Steve Wilks, he floats it in the middle of the field, and Dre Greenlaw pops it into the air, and Tayshaun Gibson picks it off and runs it back for the phantom, camp pick 6. Suddenly it's like he threw a pick. Now, and it's like, okay, did he really throw a pick, or did he throw a training camp pick? Alex Smith was at practice the other day, and he saw everybody writing down all these notes after every play. And he was like, are people really charting training camp practices on every single play? And he was like laughing about it. But you know what? I felt the need to, and I know other content creators felt the need to, because literally I didn't feel comfortable, stating that a guy had a good practice without really knowing exactly where the numbers lied. Now, I don't believe in training camp stats. Camp stats. I've pushed back against camp stats for 5 years. Because I was the quality control coach in the Canadian League. I worked with the head coach on practice scripts. I was there in the coaches' meetings when coaches said, "Hey, can you go at this corner 5 or 6 times at the beginning of practice? Why do you want that, Bob?" Well, because he doesn't button his chin strap, and I told him, hey, get out there. He doesn't button his chin strap until we get to 11 on 11. Actually, it was the Canadian League. It might have been 12 on 12. And it's like, hey, he's not taking the early practice seriously. I want him to take it seriously. So go at this guy like 7 straight times at the beginning of practice. That kind of stuff happens. So there's so many factors that go into, training camp and getting a team ready to play in the regular season, and coaches coaching players, that you can't look at stats in practice the way you look at stats in a game. That's not apples to apples. It is not the same thing. So, I took camp stats because simply I just wanted to make sure I knew at the end of practice where everybody stood statistically. But I don't, as you can tell when I do these live streams, I don't spend a lot of time quoting the camp stats because I don't believe in them. I don't believe in the camp stats. To me, practice is where you find out what you can do. Practice is where you find out what you can't do. If you don't throw any, I would make an argument that throwing 5 or 6 interceptions in practice is better than throwing none. If you're throwing none, that means you're not throwing enough of the 50-50 balls. You're not giving your receiver a chance to make a play. You're not taking enough chances. You're not letting it rip, as Kyle would say. But to some people, 5 interceptions in training camp compared to none shows that the person who threw the 5 interceptions is far worse of a player. And that's a failure to understand how coaches prepare players and how players prepare for the season. So there you go.
I mean, Kyle Shanahan is a very interesting guy. You know, he likes things a certain way. And I'm not trying to make a conspiracy theory or anything, but I can't imagine that they didn't at one point have some type of meeting or discussion about the fact that there is a huge, huge focus on who Kyle thinks is the third string quarterback. And that's like the biggest talking point on the entire team right now is what is the third string quarterback? How many snaps is he getting? What's his completion percentage in camp? People are arguing with each other. People are fighting in the stands. I'm not sure if that was what that fight was about, but like there's people that are just yelling and screaming, and it's like 2 different fan bases colliding, and they're really just one fan base, and they probably hated that. They probably don't like the scrutiny on a third string quarterback. So
completion percentage.
Anyone who knows training camp would not be counting the number of completions in a 7-on-7. I mean, again, I haven't covered all the practices for years and years and years. I'm not that old, but I mean, it seems like this is kind of a new thing. It doesn't seem like that's the thing that's been done for decades. It seems like this is a Trey Lance, Brock Purdy stats comparison every single day of the week for the next 3 weeks. And let's see who comes out on top. But Kyle Shanahan had already made up his mind.
It's just all this faulty comparisons. It's like so many people that argued that Brock Purdy should not be the starting quarterback argued that the main reason that he shouldn't be the starting quarterback is he didn't have the big arm and didn't go down the field. But then I watched training camp every single day, and literally Brock Purdy, and then maybe second would be Brandon Allen, were the only quarterbacks that showed a willingness to consistently throw the ball down the field. Everybody else checked it down all summer long. And then we're going to talk about completion percentage. I mean, literally, I watched one practice where Brock Purdy took 5 shots down the field and missed 4 of them. And one of either Darnold or Lance checked it down to a running back, or every pass was a hitch or within 3, 4, 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. And at the end of the practice, we got people talking about, well, one guy completed all of his passes or most of his passes. The other guy only completed this percentage of the passes. Well, what is it? Is it you don't like Brock Purdy because he's dink and dunk, or then now all of a sudden completion percentage means everything? So which one is it? Is it completion percentage is God, or is it arm strength is God? Is it driving the ball down the field? That's the key, or is it completing the highest percentage of passes in July in a 7-on-7 drill? I mean, I just think that at the end of the day, people just found the player they liked, and then would the old saying, stats lie and liars use statistics, and that's really it. I like player X, and then I'm going to create a statistical profile that says that he's the best player out here. Well, I don't know. And then have you noticed this too? It was Kyle Shanahan who whoever you want to give credit to, Kyle Shanahan's the number 1 guy in the 49er organization. He's at the top of the masthead. He hired John Lynch as the general manager. Kyle, everything starts and ends with Kyle. Anything good they do is because of Kyle. Anything bad they do is because of Kyle. But Brock Purdy, people are arguing recently, he wasn't Kyle's pick.
I got into an argument about this on Twitter.
But Trey Lance was. And then here's the other thing. People argue left and right all the time. You know what? Kyle Shanahan can't pick quarterbacks. But you're telling me that he picked Trey Lance, and that Trey Lance is for sure the best quarterback, but Kyle Shanahan's terrible at picking quarterbacks. Does anybody see the contradiction in that? So you think that Kyle Shanahan, the same people that are arguing that Trey Lance, is Kyle's pick, are also arguing that Kyle can't pick quarterbacks, but that Trey needs to play.
I mean, you just got.
It's this gigantic circle of just crap. And at the end of the day, it's like, what do we got? What do we got? I think that long-term, Trey Lance is going to be a good quarterback. But I also know that short-term, Brock Purdy should be the starter. As far as Sam Darnold, was it a fair competition? Did Darnold really beat out Trey? Well, he was better in the Raider game. There are people around the 49ers that believe he was better in both preseason games. I talked to a couple people on the sidelines today who felt like Darnold outplayed Trey over the last 2-3 weeks. To hear Shanahan discuss it on the radio, he obviously concurs. So what I saw from Sam Darnold was a guy who was a little bit more consistent and a little bit calmer, a little bit, as I said, he doesn't have the high ceiling of Trey Lance, but he has a higher floor.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about a backup quarterback, maybe your floor is more important than your ceiling.